Hey, welcome to HR Famous, brought to you by Kinetics, the leading RPO recruiting firm for growth companies. Named by HRO Today as the top midsize RPO provider, Kinetics uses its unique skill-based recruiter model to deliver on RPO engagements, allowing them to customize scope to meet your unique hiring needs. If you have recruiting challenges and want to consider RPO as a solution, give Kinetics a call. Find them online at kineticshr.com. HR Famous is also brought to you by HRU Tech, a contingent staffing firm specializing in engineering, IT, and technically related placements across multiple industries. If you're looking for technical talent or searching for a career, look no further than HRU Tech. Find them online at hrutech.com and call them today.
HR Famous crew, I am back. It's Tim Sackett along with my cohort Chris Dunn. Jlee, Jessica Lee, is on a beach vacation with her kids, much needed, she said, out of leaving the DMV and getting out of her house there and actually getting outside with the kids. So we'll say hi to Jlee. KD, and I'm back literally this morning.
Yeah, welcome back.
Utah. And did some social distancing at the national parks. I think it's funny to see. So like we went to Zion they do like
big deal.
They have a
NBD.
No,
big deal.
It's awesome. No big deal. It's awesome to if you haven't been to Zion, you guys have to go to Zion. It's crazy. It's gargantuan. That's the only thing I like to say. Like when you look up, you feel small in the world. But they're trying to do social distancing. So one of the things they did, KD, is they have like these shuttles that go in and out. And it's usually free, right? So because they want to try to make, I guess you have to pay to get into the park, but whatever. Otherwise, you use the shuttle. And they made it so that you had to pay $1 to get a ticket, and then they limit the ticket. So that's how they've kind of limited the number of people coming in, which I think for most people that are going there on vacation don't realize that they just made this change. And so you can understand the number of really upset families that are outside of the park going, wait a minute. And then the entire dynamic of there's a lot of private shuttle buses that have licenses to be able to go in, and you see these guys in parking lots going, hey, I can come over here. And there's these deals going on.
Like a limousine driver in the airport, right? Just trying to pick you off as you walk out. Hey, so Tim, I'm interested in that because I've been following your vacation and I'm jealous.
Thank you.
So how does that whole setup impact you taking your private Jeep in and just running around Zion in your Jeep? How's that work?
Well, there's actually a highway that goes through Zion, Highway 9 in Utah. So you can still drive. Everybody can still drive that, right? Because it kind of basically goes through the state. But then there's really one main road called Scenic Drive in Zion that they close it down with gates. So you can't, even with my Jeep, I can't get through that. So, and then there's tons of spots on the highway that goes through Zion that you can stop and just go off into the mountains and hike and do that. So people can still do that. And so, I basically took the family, did that.
So this is your third time out there, right? Third time? Third big block?
Third big block of time, yeah.
So it's your third big block. My observation in terms of stalking you on Instagram, Timmy, is that you're getting really spoiled on scenery. Because what I've noticed about Zion is people talk about the Grand Canyon. The Grand Canyon is a hole in the ground. And unless you're on the bottom of the canyon, you can't see the scenery. And everything I see on your Instagram account, you're getting spoiled by the scenery. And I predict that I know you have this grand plan to go out there a bunch over the next 5 years. I predict you're going to tell Mrs. Sackett that, hey, changing plans. We're no longer going to Zion or this area. What's it called? Tell me what it's called in Utah. St. George.
St. George.
St. George.
Yeah.
You're no longer going to St. George because you've been spoiled by the scenery. Instead, you're going to get a condo in downtown Detroit. And that's the scenery you're going to change to because you're going to get spoiled. It's amazing. It's desert and these orange, it's art.
It is. It's amazing. By the way, downtown Detroit is beautiful as well. So I would get a condo.
Get that plug in so the haters don't come out. Hey, the other thing, Tim, is shout out to you renting the jet skis in the desert. So Desert Lake, for those of you that haven't seen his Instagram, Go ahead. Tell us like what it is. I've got it
No,
wrong.
so-
It's not a desert lake and jet skis.
Well, it's a reservoir, right? So they just basically like block up a mountain canyon, and then like the mountain streams and stuff. River runs like into that. So Katie, I'm like a lake snob as well because
does the river run into it. That's so interesting. Tim, tell me
river
more.
runs into it.
Okay.
Being from Michigan, I'm a lake snob because we have the Great Lakes. So it's like you're used to really great water. And so I didn't know what the reservoir would be like. I had a feeling like I'm like all this crap is just going to run in there. It's probably just kind of skanky. It's super nice. Like it's like we did cliff jumping and like the water's pure and clear and, nice and cold. So I'm a total fan now of Sand Hollow State Park. And
as you should be. It's beautiful.
By the way, it's Hurricane, Utah. It's spelled hurricane, but they call it Hurricane, Utah.
Interesting.
So we're going to bring on a guest here in a little bit, Katie Shana from Business Insider, and I got that right because I kept pronouncing her name wrong.
Shana.
And I was telling her about the difference in going to Utah versus Michigan, and she's in New York, and the amount of like craziness that we've gone through with COVID and social distancing and mask and washing your hands and all this. And when you get out to Utah, it's slightly a lot less. Not as many people there are concerned.
Got it. Airports are strange too, right? It's like an airport in Will Smith, I Am Legend, right? You're going through there, nobody's there.
Yeah. No, I mean, in Salt Lake City was actually fairly busy. Like it seemed normal.
Kind of
not
point,
normal,
right?
normal.
Kind of do your point. It's different.
Detroit is still like a ghost town when we went through there. Like the parking garages are still mostly empty. So that's some of that stuff's kind of weird. The distancing on the planes have gotten a little tighter too. So when we first went and flew out, we literally had rows in between, like where we sat with somebody else. And now there's just people in every row. They just might not have as many people. So they say that they're going to try to social distance, but they got to make some money, right?
Sure, absolutely.
So, Katie, we want to talk about one of the new things we want to add to HR Famous is CHRO moves, or even like had like chief people officer moves, stuff like that. And you have one this week. Why don't you introduce?
Yeah, so it's our first time doing this, Tim. So the CHRO move of the week, just something that caught our eye. I hope we'll have theme music for this in the future, some type of like nice show tune, bringing me in as the reporter. So we can try. We'll hit this in the show notes, but the CHRO move of the week is from Eileen Moore Johnson. So she is the new CHRO. Just a great background, great move, but she's the new EVP and Chief Human Resources Officer at Scientific Games. She's based out of Vegas. What's really interesting about this one, again, Eileen Moore Johnson, and we'll show it in a link if you go to the landing page. She was a regional president for Caesars Entertainment. So kind of interesting. And if you look at her background, just related to what she's done, not a lot of HR, more of an operational person. So if you look at her last role at Caesars, so she oversaw a book of business. So get this, like I'm sure Sean has been to Vegas. Tim, I know you've been to Vegas a bunch. So she oversaw 8,400 hotel rooms, 28 restaurants, 7,000 employees, 1.4 billion in net revenues, 435 million in EBITDA. So impressive background, et cetera, et cetera. And she makes the move to HR. And the other thing that I love about her background, because Tim, and I know we're going to talk to Shana a little bit about a feature she did of like 20 HR leaders, like building culture, et cetera, et cetera. One of the things that you and I love, and we'll talk to Shana about this, is before she was in Vegas from 2009 to 2013, she's at the Horseshoe, Southern Indiana, in the Louisville like area, right? Which by the way, it's 3,400 employees, and it looks like she's doing a Horseshoe Casino in Joliet, Metropolis, which is in Southern Illinois. So it's kind of like this regional thing. And Tim, you and I love people who are kind of in those core hard roles. Now that's not an HR role, but she's kind of got that in her DNA, right? What'd you see in the profile?
Yeah, no, I love the fact that, you have to bide your time in Joliet, and work on the Horseshoe on the river there. And kind of get it. I love that she actually at first, when I first looked at her profile, she was out of Cornell. So I'm like, oh, they have a great HR program. But she actually had a hospitality degree. But then she went to Northwestern and got an MBA from Kellogg, which is one of the top 10 MBA programs in the world. So obviously, super smart lady, great background, great education. And then like the actual scientific games one as well, which I had like never even heard of, is a giant company, 9,000 team members,
right.
$3.5 billion. Obviously they run all the kind of the gaming for a lot of these casinos. So it's a good fit for her operationally to go there. But again, jumping from almost all of operations into HR, I think what we know is not unique anymore. It's definitely great to see, because I love to see operations people go to HR.
And Tim, if you look at her background and you look at some of those Caesar's positions and you look at how she wrote it up, she's pretty proud of the mentoring she's done on those teams, on those leadership teams, and 2 to 3 levels below. That really pops out in her profile. So it's not surprising that she would make the move to scientific games. I think 2 things, and then we'll move on. I think, first of all, she kind of sees, first of all, she's got a respect for the talent game. So she takes that position, because obviously she was in a talent position, regardless of it being operations versus HR. So she bounces over to scientific games. By the way, Tim, that's where all this is going. Like, you think not only about COVID, but you think about online gaming and the attitudes about legalized gambling in America, like, all of that is going there. So she is zigging before the zag happens, and we all see it coming, but it hasn't really happened. So it's the perfect move. And Eileen, we are, happy to have you in HR. What a great thing to have somebody like this come into the field.
I know. I keep waiting for AI to get into the casino game. So like when I'm sitting there at the slot machine and I'm looking at it and I'm starting to get disinterested and getting ready to move and starting to push the button to cash out, like the AI realizes that and gives me a quick win to keep me like hooked in, right? That's coming.
Right.
Eventually they're going to find ways to get more of our money. All right, KD, let's move on, and we're going to bring in our guest. So Shana Lebowitz Gaynor is the correspondent and Business Insider HR Insider writer. She's been there for a little bit over 5 years. Shana, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks so much for having me on.
And we're actually looking. You're in, like you had said, you were in New Jersey, but I see the Cornell flag on the side of your wall there, even though you're out of New York. You said you were staying with your in-laws. We wanted to bring you on because one is you wrote this like really kind of like, I would say, article that just like blew up in the HR space, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. At the same time, like I pulled you up, and we, like, Katie and I are recruiters at heart, so we stalked you online first to see like where you came from. And you had this. So you've been Business Insider for over 5 years, but before that, you did like this Bustle 3-month section relationship writer, and then I'm like, oh no, that's a perfect like totally network into HR. And then we took a look at your education, and like really kind of like really big education in terms of it's Brandeis, right? I always like, or is it Brandeis?
It's Brandeis.
Brandeis.
You can call it whatever you like.
And then Columbia for your master's. And so at that point, we're like, okay, super smart, great HR writer. Also is willing to have a little bit of fun in terms of your writing ability. And so we wanted to bring you on and talk shop.
Well, thank you. I feel I'm at a loss for words, as they say, which is not good for a writer. But anyway, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to do some HR shop talking. Nice.
So when we think about like HR and how HR people get their news, and obviously you're a correspondent writer in the space, how do you think, you guys probably have some insight to this at Business Insider, like where do you think most HR pros are getting their education, their news from?
I think it's an interesting question to be asking right now. There are certainly like HR blogs that, you and Chris will know a lot more about than I will, but I honestly think HR professionals are getting their news much the same way other industries are. They're kind of seeing like Twitter and LinkedIn, like people, posts going viral about someone's job change or like a terrible experience someone had like on either side of a job interview. And that kind of leads to a broader conversation. I think that like things are really moving to social media, which sounds, almost trite at this point, but I think a lot of people are picking up on trends that way.
No, and it's interesting because I've never considered myself a journalist. Far from it. Like I'm a blogger and, proud to be that, even though I think, there was a point there, KD, where I think bloggers got dumped on quite a bit. And, you kind of got lumped into, because they tried to, I think maybe they tried to like, if you think you're a journalist? I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm total opinion. Just throw it out there.
Right.
I don't like do any research. I mean, if I do, it's very, very little. But then like, Shana, obviously you're like a real journalist and you have different standards and ethics, I think probably than what we do. And so, we see this growth, and I know Katie and I have seen it, like Business Insider is blowing up over the last probably 5 years for sure. It used to be like, I would just get like an email, every once in a while. And like, you'd take a look at some of the stuff and you were like, oh, that's cool. And I knew it was big when like the first time Business Insider ever picked up one of my blog posts and like all of a sudden the traffic just blew up on the site. And you're like, oh, so there's a lot of people that are reading, obviously, and following. So as you've gone through this and seen this growth within Business Insider, what do you think people are looking for from you in terms of like content, in terms of traffic? Like I know you've written a lot of articles. What are the things that people are connecting with most?
I hate to say it, but the things people are connecting with most, and maybe this is more, I was going to say it's more on the job seeker or the employee side, but it could be more HR people too. Articles on what to do when you hate your job, when your work life is miserable, when you need to get out of your job and find a new one immediately. That stuff always gets a lot of traction, I am sorry to say. I think in the more recent, like the much more recent past, I published this one article on, it was an analysis of a memo that Boston Scientific sent out as the protests were starting recently. And that actually also performed well for us. Readers seem to be really interested in seeing that as like a case study. And, if I'm a company leader, how can I send out a letter like that would show as much compassion and integrity and respect? That's a little bit of a different, side of things.
Hey, Shana, one of the things I love about Business Insider, and I think we could all learn from it from not necessarily from a writing perspective, the writing's great, but how it's formatted is I think one of the things people really identify with and are drawn to is the simplicity and the white space that's included in Business Insider. Do you find that as well, having other experiences writing for other publications? Do you see that, and how has your writing style changed to fit Business Insider?
I'm very glad to hear you say you appreciate the formatting. It's something, I probably don't think about it as much as my editors and management does, but it's something they think about a lot too. And in terms of how my writing style has changed, I think, get to the point is probably no one's ever said that to me explicitly, but I think that's been communicated to me. Like, I think something that people, readers appreciate about BI, whether they're reading HR and careers content or otherwise, is, there's not a lot of like dancing around the idea and beating around the bush and the most important thing buried 5 paragraphs down. I think, it's really what you need to know to be knowledgeable and successful in your particular field or industry. Yeah,
and every once in a while, I see people like dunking on Business Insider because of the simplicity of it. But clearly, the market never lies, right? The market's like responded. But Tim and I are Prime subscribers. You'll be happy to know, Shana.
I'm very happy.
So we bought into that. So shout out to your editors who might listen this long, but you could point them to this section and say, it grabbed us and we're in now. I think the other thing that I love and I really rely on is some of the aggregation that happens in the newsletter, Shana. So I am waiting. I'm going to let you react to this, but I'm waiting for you to come up with the 10 things I need to know in HR. Because I use the tech one a lot, and I find a lot of like cultural pieces and the 10 things you need to know in tech. And I would love to see you do that one for us in HR. Probably can't do it on a daily basis. There's probably not enough going on to aggregate, but weekly or even monthly would be great coming from someone like you.
Hey, that's a great suggestion. I will send it up the proverbial ladder.
Great.
Yeah, I definitely, because Katie, like you, the tech one I read every single morning. Also, I read the Market Insider one every single morning that does like the 10 things you need to know before the market opens. And I would love a weekly HR one. It'd be like,
Great
hey,
idea.
here's the 10 things for the HR, because I think that community is one that like, so Shannon, this kind of leads us into one of the things we want to talk about was the SHRM article you did. And it's probably one of the longer pieces that I've read from Business Insider. So it was more in depth. Like you said, some of this is like, hey, it's quick hitting. This is, you brought in some critics of SHRM. You brought in Johnny Taylor, who's the CEO of SHRM. You brought in some SHRM advocates and really try to get the full story. And I know that there was a lot of passion around that post. What was your reaction after putting that out there and seeing that?
It's interesting. I'll just sort of back up a little bit and say that when I first started reporting this article, like I didn't know how strongly people felt about SHRM. Like, it's members, it's people who were members. So when I, started reporting it and then ultimately published this article, that was a real, I got a real education in how it's like the HR community is certainly growing, but I think like more than quantity, it's like the intensity of the feelings of people who belong to that community are growing stronger. So that was, I think, that story just sort of showed me that there's people care a lot about how to cultivate the best working conditions in their workplace.
Yeah, and we'll link to that post in the notes for everybody listening that wants to read that. But it was really kind of the reaction to SHRM, the SHRM board, Johnny Taylor, the executive team at SHRM, their reaction to BLM, and then also the SCOTUS decision around the LGBTQ decision that was made recently. And you kind of brought in, obviously, a group of folks that have been critical of SHRM. And Katie and I think, publicly for a long time on the blog, have been both advocates and critics of SHRM, because I think initially would say every time. It was funny because I think in blogging, and this happened to me with LinkedIn, like LinkedIn hated me. I was blacklisted for like a long time. And then someone said, hey, he writes about you all the time, or writes about LinkedIn all the time, is because he actually uses your product and loves what you do and wants you to be better. And I think SHRM was the same way for a long time. Katie and I both were ones that I think were critics of SHRM. In a way that we were like, hey, we're members, we're paying members, and we want better out of our association. At the same time, we both have published books now through SHRM publications, and and obviously speak at conferences and do all kinds of stuff with them, and have a good relationship there. But I think it takes time for people to understand that those people who have the strongest voices against you are probably those people who want the most out of you as well.
I think that's absolutely true. I mean, yeah. And I think that, I love this word that I've used like 12 times in the past day, microcosm. But I do think, the issues surrounding SHRM's reputation and the way SHRM, the status that it holds in the HR industry, I think that's sort of like what's going on there is almost a microcosm of what's going on in the broader business world, because I think people want both their employers and the leaders at their employer specifically, and business leaders generally, they want them to take a stand on social and humanitarian issues. They want them to, at least try to make a positive impact on society versus just, making more money. And to your point about how, people, when they criticize it, that's a sign that they actually care about this. I think you could probably say the same as, employees who are very vocal, say on Twitter again, like about what their employer is doing. It's because they really want to work there and they want it to be a better place to work.
Shana, in your reporting on that, other than, people being passionate about it, is there anything that comes to mind as something you didn't know about SHRM in the HR environment? Obviously, a good bit about HR, you've been reporting on it, but whether it's SHRM or just whether it's the HR community, what's something other than the passion that might have surprised you and you thought was notable in your reporting on that issue?
Hi, we're Meg and Amy from The Meg and Amy Show.
We're not only tech execs and big picture thinkers, we're also best friends.
We're curious learners. And on this podcast, we're challenging the status quo and activating the future.
And we're going to give advice about work and leadership, right, Meg?
You know, we can't help ourselves. But this podcast is about exploring possibility, not being right.
That sounds refreshing.
For more, tune in to The Meg and Amy Show.
I think something, I hope this counts as surprising. It certainly counts as a learning or a lesson for me. I think that, so in recent weeks and months, there's been a lot of social and racial unrest, completely understandably. And so that's something that is like it's sort of a lot of tensions from the past century really coming to a head. But what I'm trying to say is that I don't think any of the demands that people have of HR and of their employers are going to go away. And that's something I really learned while I was reporting this story and in general while I've been writing about HR. I mean, I think the industry and the function is really evolving so that people want more than just, and you two will know this much better than I will, but people want more than paperwork and risk mitigation out of their HR leaders. They want them to help them bring their full selves to work in a place where they can thrive and a place where they can feel comfortable, speaking to power. So I think that's something that's like very the emotions are heightened right now, but I don't think it's going to go away at all.
Great.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think both Katie and I, we talked a lot about when the BLM stuff kind of definitely blew up nationally or even internationally. You're like, okay, we've been in the industry long enough that you go, okay, this is going to have a cycle, right? It's going to be hot. We're going to have protests, and then it's going to go away. And I just noticed, I think yesterday there was an article on July 20th. There's going to be a big BLM, strike, right? We're trying to get, a lot of the service workers and stuff like that just to kind of walk off the job for the day. And to me, it's not surprising, but I think the timing of it's surprising because I wouldn't think like this far away from the epicenter that they would still be, able to kind of do something like that with that big a vigor, what they're going to be able to. So yeah, super interesting.
Shana, you'll laugh at me because I'm giving you like a wish list of what I want from HR reporting out of Business Insider, right? So in addition to the 10 like things I need to know in HR, I'd love to see someone like you kind of like scan the landscape a little bit and give us a list of companies that have done the most interesting things in the aftermath of George Floyd and Black Lives Matter. For example, Tim, Jlee, and I talked on our last podcast a couple of weeks ago about VMware making a commitment on something we call the Rooney Rule, which is out of the NFL, professional football, to ensure that both a female and a minority candidate were involved in every search. So that's really something I think if anything, like we get beat down a little bit by all the kind of the PR work that companies do to say, hey, we stand with you, et cetera, et cetera. I think the real challenge for HR is going to be taking meaningful action to get results. And, I think we don't have a lot of examples of that. So if you dig in or keep a list of companies that are doing great stuff, that would be something I think the HR community would love to see.
That's great. Chris, Are you looking for a job? Because we could use someone like you at BI.
So I'm a great, Tim will tell you, Shana, I'm a great idea generator. I do write a good bit, but not nearly as well as you do.
I see. Thank you.
You bet.
So it's a great transition, Katie, because I know there was a really big article in BI as well. Shana pointed us to, and it's the 20 most inspiring HR leaders who are changing America, and how America treats workers, and also remaking company culture, which is something with not just obviously BLM, but also just the pandemic and the issues that we're facing as organizations. And so, and now again, we'll link to that article in there. What I loved about it was, one, most of these articles that you find, if you read them on another publication that we won't mention, other publications are out there, it's always like, oh, it's the CHRO of Google, and it's the CHRO of Facebook. Right. And it's like there's the same 5 people always. And like this one literally had like an HR manager, like an HR like real people that do the work. And to me, I was like, I'm in. Like, I want to read what they have to say because they're the ones actually doing the work. And so, Shana, when you guys put that together, what are some of the insights you got from what are the leaders doing out there right now that are ramping up culture in this new world?
Well, first of all, I'm very delighted to hear that you enjoyed seeing someone who is not the CHRO of Google or Facebook, which they're cool too. But yeah. So I think he may have been the last on the list, which was not in any order. But the HR chief at FedEx, and I'm actually just looking at my notes so I don't misconstrue anything here. But FedEx is looking for STEM talent specifically among, I think, 18 to 24-year-olds who aren't in school or in work. They're smart, they're talented, their talents haven't been, channeled in that way. And so I think I was really struck by that program. I think that's a terrific way of, it's making a positive impact on greater society, and then obviously adding a lot to the organization itself. The other thing I was really interested in when my editor and I put together this list is there's someone who works at a venture capital firm. And so this person is really making an effort when she works with startups to make sure they don't have a completely homogenous organization or company culture, which, can happen when you launch a startup because it's you and, a couple of your friends, and you hire your other friends, and then suddenly everyone looks, thinks, and acts like you, which is, dangerous for a lot of reasons. So I was struck by that particular initiative or effort.
Yeah. KD, do you have one?
Yeah. So first of all, when I saw the title, before I read the article, I, like Tim, Shana, was just kind of like, here we go, right? Here we go. It's like all the tech companies, et cetera, et cetera. Really pleasantly surprised when I saw really people, what Tim and I would consider at the ground level, doing the work with companies. So I thought that was really interesting. I also thought I've got a quote from you from one of your person. I just want to dig in on one of them to kind of get your reaction to it. No gotcha moment. This will be a softball for somebody like you. But Jill, I'm going to say Felska, director of people and culture at Limelight. She had a quote at the end of that really struck me. Although Felska has only worked in HR for 3 years, she understands that perks don't define a company's culture. Having a ping pong table is a perk, she said. How using it during the workday is perceived, either instantly labeling that employee as a slacker or seeing it as a smart break from screen time is a reflection of the culture. I thought that was a really interesting quote. How do you I'm assuming you probably spend 20, 30 minutes with these people, just kind of talking to them, maybe up to 45 minutes. Is that kind of the normal standard of reporting in terms of how much time you spend with someone like Jill?
I think that for a typical article, we would. I'm actually a little bit forgetting, but my editor and I, her name is Caroline, so we worked on this together. And I think so the way we did this article is people submitted nominations for the people they thought were the most innovative leaders in HR. And then we whittled it down from there. And I think the HR leaders themselves may have sent in their written responses.
Great way to aggregate it for sure. And right. Yeah.
Generally, we do get on the phone, and I have spoken to Jill on the phone, and she's terrific. So
So what really struck me about that quote is there's a lot of people that will put a ping pong table up, in a company, and it's really for the tour, and it's really for the collateral, whether it's a PDF or it goes on the website. But there are a lot of people that view how that type of kind of recreational thing is used. And I just thought it was really interesting. I think there's a lot of that going on. What any other, as you kind of read the responses from these people and talked to some of these people, anything else really interesting? I don't mean ping pong tables as a perk, but culturally, what do you see as kind of a best practice from some of these grassroots people doing great work? Is there anything that's top of mind for you?
It's funny, you know, I'm thinking grassroots people, and my first impulse is to talk about PwC and Lenovo, but
no, that's fine. You can.
Okay.
The question applies to them as well.
Oh, good. Okay, I'm glad to hear that.
Sure.
So at PwC, I'd say the two things that are really sort of standout parts of the company culture. One is that they invested really heavily in, I'm not sure if they call it an upskilling or reskilling initiative. So people are if they work at the company, if they participate in these training programs where they learn skills that largely technical skills that are going to be important for, you know, the future workplace. If they do that, they get to get to have a job at PwC. They're guaranteed that.
Right.
And so the other thing that they do there, that there's a big focus, and their HR chief is really focused on like holistic wellness and mental health benefits, which I think a lot of companies are starting to recognize the importance of, you know, not solely because of the terrible stress that people are under right now in the pandemic and the recession, but I think we actually were heading in that direction anyway, where, you know, it's not just like, here's a 401k. It's more like, here's how to not be a burnt out person.
Yeah, I agree. I think, you know, some of those types of benefits were on their way before the pandemic hit, right? And then I know we want to talk a little bit about the pandemic and your reaction to it in the world of work, but I mean, the need for those things just kind of has been multiplied for sure.
Sure.
Katie, the one I pulled out of there was, now I got to pull up the name. It was Liz Spector Loudon. She's the D&I person and also assistant general counsel at Etsy, which again, it's a big brand. A lot of people know Etsy, but having a D&I title with general counsel to me was unique. And then what they're pushing for in terms of, I think they've doubled the number of hires of people of color, which again, it gets back to, you know, actually making something happen, not just having like, you know, a new, you know, a message from your CEO about how you care. It's like, show us the actual results, right? And so I loved how they are actually making some real results as well. So check that out. We'll give you guys the link in the show notes that you can click through. Shana, before we get you out of here, we want to get, we're obviously, all of us are doing a work from home or a combination. You yourself, you know, have your bubble that you're in. And when you guys looked at, obviously, how we're remaking company culture, we would be remiss not to talk about how company culture for most of us has been in the office, right? It's the ping pong table. It's all these other things. And now when you have so many people working remotely, how do you foresee company culture evolving or changing because of that?
Yeah, I think there's certainly been a lot of chatter about, you know, like what's going to happen to innovation, and you know, you can't have people running into each other in the hallways anymore, and the world is going to, you know, implode because of that. I am not sure if that's going to happen. I tend to think it won't, but I do think company culture is going to change for the better if and when we all, you know, resume our you know, some semblance of normal working lives. And specifically, I think there may be more of an emphasis on results in terms of how managers evaluate performance and you know, assess progress. Because I think when you're remote, it becomes a little less about FaceTime and how to know if someone's working all day, and it's more about like, well, did they turn in this assignment and did they do it well? And that may carry over into the post-pandemic work era. The other thing I do think, also looking to my notes just so I say everything that I wanted to say, but I do think that there will be more of a focus on like people as people, if that makes any sense. So I think, you know, in the remote work area, if you have kids, even if you have a pet or a partner, it's really hard to hide them. And you know, I know my husband has somehow made his way into a few video calls by accident, but so, you know, I think that it will be a positive development when, after all this, like, it's okay to talk about the fact that you have kids and you maybe need to leave early to pick them up, or you're really stressed because you didn't sleep all night with your baby. You know, I think that that's just going to be more acceptable to talk about, which is great.
I do think, the flexibility piece I think is huge, because I think that's one thing that organizations always felt like, especially I think older managers there was always the asses in seats thing, right? If I don't see you sitting there, then you must not be working. And you're like, well, they could be sitting there for 40 hours and not working.
Sure.
And now I think so many of those people have understood that, oh, I actually can have, Shana could come and stay at home on a Monday, and it's not, I don't have to question whether she's going to get work done or not, or anything like that. I think is that flexibility addition to the culture, I think, is a huge outcome that we'll see on the pandemic. KD, what do you?
So Shana, I love what you said. I also think that as we are less tied to place, meaning like physical office, I think your manager really has kind of their own cultural gravity, if you will. So Shana, if we're remote and you're my manager and you're Tim's manager, your ability to flex and to show empathy in different ways to us and to be flexible to get those results that you mentioned is really going to be the key thing, because if we both come in the office, we're kind of there and we're kind of like, we have the same circumstances, but to your point, the circumstances become so fluid that I think the managers who can show empathy in different ways in different circumstances and show agility are the ones that are really win. I think probably the companies that train their managers to do that are the ones that are really win.
I think that's huge. Exactly what you said. The role of there's going to be a lot more demands on, there will be greater demands on individual managers. And as I think, if I understand correctly about what you were saying, it'll be less like, this company culture is great, so everyone who works here performs well or has the ability to perform well. It's more like my individual manager is really a great talent developer, and so everyone who works for that person performs well.
Yeah, so it's probably the quality of you as Tim's manager and my manager becomes the ping pong table, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's the microculture, right?
Yeah,
exactly. So every manager has their own microculture. Where when
and
you're in
gravity.
an office environment, that bigger culture of the organization sometimes could override that microculture if you had a crappy manager. I think when you're remote, it doesn't. I think it's right in your face that you're like, hey, I don't care that I work for Google. My manager's crappy. I'm at home. That's entirely my culture that I have now. And yeah, I have this resume builder or whatever, but still it's become such a big deal that I have this bad culture of a bad manager,
That's a great point. Yeah. I'm curious to see how that unfolds over the next however many months or years.
Awesome. So Shana, I'll get you out of here. Tell people how they can find you.
Oh, that's my turn. Hello, I'm Shana Lebowitz Gaynor. You can find me on LinkedIn under that name, on Twitter, Shana D. Lebowitz, or you can go to businessinsider.com and read my articles or my colleagues' articles on the strategy section. But let me know what you think. All the good things, all the bad things. I'm ready to hear them.
Hey, and obviously,
I sent you at least 3 emails on that SHRM one, so I'm sure you probably got more feedback than that. So
I got a little.
We'll hit the listeners with the show notes, but most importantly, Shana, let me go down my list of things here. So I got 10 things HR leaders should know. Anyway,
got it
this week.
But thanks for everything you're doing with writing about the profession. It's great.
And for those who haven't done the Business Insider Premium Prime, is it Prime?
We're not exactly certain what the name is right now, but subscribe, sign up.
It's the paid side of Business Insider. You're missing some really good content, and it's not that expensive. So definitely, if you're a leader within the HR space, probably something you need to go pay for and put in your budget, and get some of that. Katie, any last words?
No, I would say Prime or whatever they're calling it. It's worth the subscription just so you can forward some of the cultural exposés of things gone wrong in companies to some of the people you support in HR, because they'll laugh, you'll develop relationships, and just expense the $40 a year or whatever it is, because it's well worth it.
Well, thank you.
Nice.
There's also a $1 monthly trial. I have to plug this, otherwise I'll get in trouble.
Yeah,
so yeah,
absolutely.
But thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Use the code Shana. No, I'm just kidding. So for Shana Lebowitz Gaynor, Chris Dunn, I'm Tim Sackett, HR Famous Crew. We'll see you guys again next week. We are out.